Welcome back to Square Off. 2 weeks ago, elected officials and many others were painting doomsday scenarios about the massive surge of migrants at the southwest border that would follow the lifting of Title 42 restrictions. Well, that hasn't happened. Today, we're getting some insight into why and what that means for border communities, migrants, and our state. Joining us is Rafael Carranza. He reports on border issues and immigration policy for the Arizona Republic. Welcome to Square Off.
Thank you for having me, Bram.
I want to start with some data. According to the Department of Homeland Security, border agents encountered an average of 4,400 migrants per day last week. That's down from more than 10,000 crossings per day right after the lifting of Title 42, and way down from GHS's projections of 12,000 to 14,000 daily encounters. Now, no one's declaring victory. Border communities, the Border Patrol, still stressed. But what right now is your big picture takeaway about what those numbers are telling us?
You know, I think that it's still a little too early to tell. I mean, I think particularly when it comes to immigration policy, sometimes it takes a couple of weeks for us to really fully understand the full picture. I think certainly the administration feels very encouraged by these numbers and the fact that they didn't have a big wave of migrants as they had anticipated. And the numbers that they've actually released have shown that, you know, the 4,400 figures going down even further. But, you know, there's still a lot of moving components there and a lot of opportunities for that to change as well.
One sign of the stress are the street releases of migrants you reported on this past week here in Arizona. Why are they happening?
So that's happening for a variety of reasons. I think the main one has to do with capacity constraints. And I think when you look at, for example, when you look at Arizona's border, at the Tucson sector, which covers 2/3 of the Arizona's border with Mexico, a large number of people that were being apprehended there were being expelled under Title 42. So when that went away, border agents had to then, you know, take in and process those agents, take them into their facilities. That places a lot of constraints on their capacity. And so as a result, if they're unable to hold people at their holding facilities, they have to release them. The first instance there would be to transport them to larger cities like Tucson, which is traditionally the spot where migrants are dropped off. But if they're also at capacity, then the Border Patrol kind of reverts to doing what they call street releases at communities that are close to their Border Patrol stations in southern Arizona.
What effect are the Biden administration policies, the new ones, having on migrants?
Well, you know, the changes that went into effect after May 12, I think that the whole intent behind that for the administration was to create a sort of carrot and stick approach. You'll create the so-called legal pathways, which are the avenues for people to apply legally to come into the United States. And then if they do not do that, then imposing harsher consequences. And that's something that we didn't see as much of during Title 42 because people were able to be expelled immediately right away without consequences. And so they're betting that having those consequences in place, which could include a 5-year ban on re-entry or even jail time if you attempt to enter the country multiple times, then they're betting that that's going to encourage people to then, you know, funnel them to the sort of these legal pathways, what they call.
Many Biden administration critics say there's also a virtual end to asylum in some cases that might be getting through. Is that the case?
Essentially, that's what the new rules kind of stipulate, because the threshold for asylum has now been raised so high that it essentially makes a lot of people ineligible for asylum. And that is somewhat contrary to what U.S. law says, which is very clear. That says it doesn't matter how you get to the U.S., you are able to claim asylum. But under these new rules, there's a lot of stipulations. For example, if you cross through a country on the way to the United States, and if you don't apply for asylum there, you're considered ineligible. If you attempt to cross the border without authorization, if you don't apply through one of these legal pathways programs or make an appointment through a phone app, then you're considered ineligible as well.
And so there's a pretty strong word-of-mouth network, social network among migrants. Are these the messages they're getting? Is that having an effect?
You know, that's definitely the prime way that I think a lot of this information is disseminated. We've seen that in the past as well. And I think that this is still very early on in the process. I think when the new rules were announced, you already had, you know, thousands of migrants already in transit on their way to the United States. So I think it's going to take some time for the full scope of this information to really trickle down to all of the different places. But I will say that in many times, you know, that information is just a small part of the calculus calculus that migrants, take when they decide to do that. The primary, I think, is going to be how safe do they feel if they feel that they have the economic opportunities at home. In many cases, they don't.
And their desperation doesn't change.
Absolutely.
For the smugglers, this is a very lucrative business, and they respond as a business would. How are they responding to this?
That still hasn't played out yet. I think that we will see more of that developing in the next few weeks, but we do know that the cartels and the smuggling networks are very resourceful and quick to adapt to the changing policies along the U.S.-Mexico border. But what we do know from past events or from past policies is that whenever you create a waiting population of migrants on the Mexican border cities, the smuggling networks are all too eager to prey on desperate people waiting for an undetermined amount of time.
So they're going to make money one way or another.
They'll find a way.
All right. Rafael Carranza, great insight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.